As part of the years-long US sanctions on Iran, billions of dollars of its assets are being held overseas. Tehran wants them released under its new agreement with Washington. The frozen assets are funds or financial holdings that can't be used because of sanctions or other restrictions. In Iran's case, the funds are mainly oil revenues and foreign currency reserves held in banks abroad. Estimates put the total at more than $100 billion. Much of it is held in countries that have purchased Iranian oil, including Iraq, China, Japan, India, South Korea and Luxembourg. The US first imposed sanctions on Iran in 1979 after protesters seized its embassy in Tehran. They were later expanded to cover Iran's nuclear and missile programs. And in 2023, the US issued a waiver that allowed $6 billion to be transferred from South Korea to Qatar as part of a prisoner swap deal. Iran could only use the money for approved humanitarian purchases. Right, to discuss all of this and the deal further, let's bring in our guest. Joining us from Tehran is Mostafa Khoshcheshm, a professor at the University of Applied Sciences. And with me in the studio today is Associate Professor of Government at Georgetown University in Qatar, Paul Musgrave. Thank you both, gentlemen. Paul, I'll start with you. Frozen assets and sanctions lifted. The devil is in the detail, though. What will Iran be looking for in order to get that money guaranteed to them at the end of this 60-day period?
Iran is going to be looking for a lot from the United States and from other countries that have sanctioned Iran in cooperation with the United States. As you mentioned, this is an incredibly tangled web. There are some funds that have been frozen. There's also questions about sanctions that can be lifted. Vice President J.D. Vance has said that some of this will be dependent upon the performance, upon whether or not Iran actually lives up to what they're looking for. But on the Iranian side, you have to be looking both to the legal and to the political realities, especially in Washington. There's a U.S. law that requires Congress to have review over any nuclear deal with Iran, which would also touch on sanctions authority and the ability of the president to lift these sanctions, these frozen assets as well, under some dimensions. And the mood on Capitol Hill, if you read news reports, apparently is very, very grim, very angry about this deal, especially on the Republican side. On the other hand, there's also going to be questions about whether or not President Trump is really going to be willing to lift these sanctions, given that he's already taking a lot of criticism from conservatives in the United States and, of course, from Israelis, given that this is money that will go to a regime that until last week he was describing as a great threat, a great adversary. But if the president is very much committed to doing a deal, I think that the Iranian government is going to insist on this, and President Trump might simply have to find a way to bear that political cost and use his authorities to release these. OK, Mostafa, when we spoke on a previous occasion, you said you thought a final deal might be 1,000 light years away, but there are now just 60 days to get this deal done. What is the rush for Iran? Is there a concern that, as Paul said, the US is under pressure and Iran is going to get the best deal it can if it keeps that pressure up?
Hello, Anna. Thanks for having me. Well, you know, if you just take a look at the deal, as many have been saying across the globe, like in your report in Israel, in the United States, it's almost everything about the United States, obligations. Iran is not going to give anything. Like it will have its enrichment. At low levels, of course, the Iranian stockpile will be just diluted, not disposed and demolished completely, not to be given to the United States or anyone else. And Iran will just commit to not pursue any military nuclear program. And this has been the case ever since Iran started its nuclear program. It has always been saying that. And Iran was under monitoring before, under the monitoring of the IAEA before Donald Trump attacked Iran last year alongside Israel. So the rest is about removing all types of sanctions, UN Security Council resolutions, IAEA resolutions, U.S. primary, secondary sanctions, unfreezing Iran's locked assets, releasing them. And so it has two meanings. Either Donald Trump has grown sober by this catastrophic defeat, or he's just playing. And Iranians are now having mixed feelings because they're proud that they have imposed such a defeat on the United States, Donald Trump, as the provisions of the MOU says, and but at the same time, they are distrustful of the United States when it goes into implementation, because we have had a long history of deals with the United States, the last one being the JCPOA, where the U.S. has defied its obligations and commitments. So Iranians are very much watchful of how the U.S. Treats everything. And by the way, it's not $100 billion. Actually, Iran has worked out ways to bypass the frozen assets and to bypass the U.S. rules, for banking rules that allegedly froze $100 billion. But in practice, as you could see in the MOU, it's no more than $24 billion. Iran has worked out banking and SWIFT and swap mechanisms with different countries in order to release 3/4 of its assets already.
Okay.
So we are talking about just $24 billion.
All right. I'm sorry we can't go back to banking details at this point. I do want to make sure with the time we have left, Paul, we talk about the impact of this war wider than just the debate between the US and Iran. There was a lot of discussion, everybody saying the Strait has to be opened, we have to get it opened. Already now, though, since this MOU, the IEA saying this crisis will cause formation of a new global energy map. How damaging has this war been to Iran's neighbours?
Well, this war has really upset a lot of the predictions and a lot of the assumptions that countries in and around the Arabian Gulf have relied upon. From Israel to Oman, a lot of fundamental axioms from the reliability or even the stability of the United States and its presence here to the simple fact that hydrocarbons, helium, fertilizer, many other things that were presumed to be able to transit with the protection of the U.S. Navy have not been transiting. Someone said that the vase has been broken, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed. That is going to be a lever that Tehran will be able to at least threaten to use in the future. In anticipation of that, we're seeing infrastructure projects being built, new pipelines across Saudi Arabia, the deepening and expansion of infrastructure facilities at Fujairah in the UAE on the ocean side, and of course Syria emerging as a new pass-through. All of this is transformational because it reduces the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, and yet you're also seeing around the world both demand destruction as countries accelerate their green energy transition, not for environmental reasons, but purely for security reasons against the immense volatility that we are seeing in oil markets. And then also, as you begin to see other producers react to the possibility of increasing their production, and one of those producers, of course, is Iran, where the releasing of sanctions could actually lead to Iran making as much as $60 billion a year from oil sales that won't be tapped by anything like OPEC. And that really will have a major effect on countries that have not gone farther down the diversification route economically.
OK, Mostafa, just quickly before we go then, to that point, one example, Saudi's Aramco says it's now looking at storage facilities being based around the world. Iran's neighbours do not trust it. Can Iran repair those relationships and rebuild trust?
Well, it's quite a long time Iran's been saying that the trans-regional states, especially the United States, should leave the region alone, and the countries in the region could work out their problems. Now, you could see in this MOU that Iran has made a major breakthrough in this regard, because when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, the MOU says that Iran should work out ways with Oman while exchanging views with the littoral states. Yeah, there is no mention of the United States or anyone else. This was the policy even under President Raisi and Amir Abdullahian, the martyred foreign minister. Actually, several years ago, he offered regional states, Saudi Arabia and all others, as well as Iraq, to work out an 8-member country of the littoral states of the Persian Gulf to have security arrangements by each other away from the meddling of the United States. Now, you could see in this MOU that Iran has imposed its will, and it's very much important. I believe if the U.S. leaves the region, then there will be a good chance for all the countries to come closer to work out security arrangements. It's not just about Iran or the Persian Gulf. The future from now on will be, a different future, not just because of Iran, the war with Iran, but the whole world is on a transition of power from the Western civilization to the East. And during this decade of the 20th 20s, you are seeing the U.S. and the Western countries' resistance against this transition of power. So you could see challenges and wars like in Ukraine, like Iran, maybe in coming years in China. And this means that in future, the new world order will be worked out by regional coalitions and international coalitions, especially the ones in the East, like BRICS, like the Shanghai Organization, and so on and so forth. Because those that come out victorious from these wars, like Iran, like Russia, to this point.
Okay, thank you so much, Mostafa. I'm sorry, we have to end it there. Mostafa Khoshcheshm joining us from Tehran and Paul Musgrave joining us in the studio in Doha.